Hey guys, today we're talking about section 5 in the Prophecy Pros Illustrated Guide to Tough Questions About the End Times. And section 5 is all about Israel and the Jewish people. If there's one topic that I hear the most confusion about, or people not understanding, even people that have been believers their whole lives, it's what is the relationship between God and Israel? What's the relationship between the church and Israel? And even in a lot of denominations, there's been this thing called replacement theology. That's crept in that says the church replaced Israel. And the analogy I use sometimes is I'm an animation producer, so I have a company called Timbuktunes. And any animation project we do, we have to do a project agreement. Hey, here's how much the animation costs. Here's what our deliverables are. Here's what we're going to deliver. Here's the date. Here's what it's going to be about. So it's kind of a legal binding document. Well, God made a legal binding document that's even more binding than that. It's a covenant. It's something that, matter of fact, when you look at the Abrahamic covenant, Abraham was asleep. God himself walked through an animal sacrifice that was cut apart, and basically saying, if I don't keep my promise, may this be done to me. And again, Abraham was asleep, so the covenant was all one-sided. But anyway, it would be, to replace the Israel with the church would be like me having an animation contract and then my client calling me saying, hey, where's our animation? And then I say, oh, well, I know we signed a contract together, but I went ahead and did that animation for this guy over here and it's already done. So I'm not doing your animation anymore. I'm not honoring that contract. So that to me, that helps me see, okay, well, God's not done with Israel. And that's what that whole section is about. We go into all the different facets of God's purpose for Israel, his relationship with Israel, and his future culmination of how all that ties up in the end times.
Yeah, absolutely. And in Romans, Paul wrote the Romans and said, hey, the gifts and callings of God are irrevocable. In other words, he doesn't just make a promise to Israel like Jesus made a promise to the church. God made promises to Israel regarding the land, regarding the nation, regarding the Davidic kingdom, and someone sitting on David's throne, which of course we know is Jesus. And those promises are not fulfilled yet. And so instead of just saying, oh, they're fulfilled in the church, well, you got to do some gymnastics with the text to get to that point. You have to have an interpretive view to get to that point, saying that it's symbolic, and we sort of inherit all of Abraham's promises. But when you read Revelation, when you read Daniel, you find out that God is not done with Israel yet. Romans chapter 11, verses 25 and 26 say that a partial hardening has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. And so God has basically placed Israel as a nation sort of on a back burner, right, Todd? And he's dealing with the whole world, with Gentiles and Jews at this point. But there's going to come a time when that last Gentile is taken at the rapture. We believe he's going to turn his attention back to Israel and fulfill some of those promises. He's going to bring them back to faith. They've been physically regathered now. Now there's going to be a spiritual regathering towards the end of the tribulation period. In fact, the whole tribulation period is really kind of about the Jews, right?
Yeah, it really is. A lot of people haven't studied Daniel chapter 9 before, but the tribulation is really the 70th week of years of Daniel chapter 9, and it's all about Jewish history. It has nothing to do with the church.
Absolutely.
The church, you and I believe, will be out of here. And other people will get saved. We call them tribulation saints. But after chapter 4 in the book of Revelation, there's no church mentioned. And all of God's focus shifts back to the Jewish people. And honestly, just thinking logically and tying back to the contract analogy, if God replaced Israel with the church and didn't keep his promise to them, then how can we really have confidence in the promises that he's given us?
Right.
Like, what's your track record here? So I think we need to, and there's various reasons why people hold those other views. And again, it's not a salvation issue, but it does have some huge ramifications on several things, particularly about the end times.
It does. And I think most Christians are curious about the Jewish people, about Israel. It's like, what's going on? No one can deny, I don't care what view you hold in the end times, that something is happening in Israel and that God is dealing with the Jewish people. And this section in the book really tackles that head on. It's going to clear up so much confusion for you as you study about what God's doing with the Jewish people today. So check it out in this book, The Prophecy Pros Illustrated Guide to Tough Questions About the End Times. Dive in. You're going to be underlining, you're going to be highlighting, and you're going to be learning from the wisdom that we've been able to give you, but also the wisdom that's been given to us as well, because Todd and I are still learning ourselves in our journey too. So we're all learning in this thing together. We pray it'll be a big blessing to you.